Thank you for coming. This talk on AI and its effects on the creator community, which I think we all have. I'm sure we all have an opinion. So I'm going to preface this whole thing with I'm not a copyright attorney. I have zero law degrees. I'm just a man of opinions, and I sometimes think about them. And I thought this is one of those. And I have given this actually some thought, and I've got a few ideas which are more to assuage the fears that a bunch of people have, because obviously we're all again thinking that AI is going to, well, whether creatively kill us or one day down the line get all Skynet and actually kill us. Then I'm worried about the creative at the moment. I'll worry about the other stuff later on. So just to start off, this isn't going to be like a lecture. I'm going to just throw something out, and then I'm just going to invite questions and amongst each other. It's not all necessarily having to go through me. Like anybody that has a question and anybody that's got an answer, I'm inviting everybody to really make this a participatory thing. So to start with, I just want to say with again, everybody's at the well, everybody and whoever everybody is, the fear that say you go on to what's called so you put your images up on Instagram, say we use Instagram as the foil here, and they're allowing Meta's, since they're sub company of Meta, that they're allowing the Meta AI programs or AI machines or whatever these things are to train on our images. So all of our images, as at least in the U.S., and the U.S. has the most stringent copyright laws. So in the U.S., as soon as you expose that photograph, whether it's on film, on digital, however, whoever at the moment of exposure, you have the copyright of that. So everything that, and whether you want it or not, it's yours. So the everything that's being skimmed and learned from on Meta is copyrighted material. Now that scares some people, thinking, well, they're stealing my stuff. What gives them the right? Now, here's my thought on the whole thing. It's exactly the way we all create to begin with. Everything that we've ever created is based on things that we've copyrighted materials that we've looked at, been inspired by, learned from, and incorporated into everything that we do. So none of us are reproducing exactly any work that we've looked at in the past and were inspired by. So if there's no way to, as people, of course, there's a way to restrict computers from seeing all this, but what's the gain really? And what is the point? What's the threat? If you think of, if they were to spit out something that was an exact replica or even a very, very close replica of say the VJ Day Kiss or the VE Day, which I can't remember which V it was, or any of Ansel Adams' work, or any photograph that you can name or not name. If it had done that, copyright protection would allow the owner of that copyright to sue because it didn't make a derivative of it. It wasn't inspired by it. It literally plagiarized that. And which there was a case which I just recently looked up. I was just to refresh my memory, but it was Lynn Goldsmith had sued the Andy Warhol Foundation. And so this is people on people. This had nothing to do with it, but it's relative and relevant in the fact that what's going on back in 1981, Vanity Fair had commissioned what's called Lynn Goldsmith to do a photograph of had commissioned a photograph from Lynn Goldsmith that she had already shot of Prince. And so that was that. So years later, we're talking like, okay, sorry about that. So, okay, what happened was she had this photograph. They commissioned the photograph from her to be interpreted by Andy Warhol in the color purple, to be Purple Prince, in which we all know. And so it was a one-time use, done, sealed, signed, delivered. That's it. In 2016, again, long after Andy Warhol's dead, she finds out that he had made a series of these images in multiple colors. And so then they had license, the Andy Warhol Foundation had then sold a license to Vanity Fair for this basically the same exact image, only now in a different color. And they're like, well, it's a different image. Well, first of all, they were never licensed to make a second, third, fourth, fifth, or any other copy of it to begin with. So they're off and running with this. They had no chance. But you never know with businesses and stuff like that. But a lower court upheld that Lynn Goldsmith had the copyright and that the Andy Warhol Foundation had breached it. And then the Supreme Court had upheld that. That being said, it's the same thing. You can apply it to AI. If AI does something similar, then you easily could go after them for again, if it doesn't, like if it looks like something you did so close that there's no arguable way that they can say it's something else, you'd have a claim. So other than that, it's just a matter that it's the same thing as as a baby growing up to become us. We learn by seeing, we learn by experience. We take all this stuff in and we just eventually output it in whatever creative medium we have in whichever way we're able to. So, and nobody bitches about it. Like nobody's like, oh my God, what's because that person went to the museum and saw way too many Robert Franks, and now all his shit looks like Robert Frank. Oh, I wish, but it's not how it works. So, does this make sense to anybody? Okay, because again,
Yeah.
Because I hear a lot of people automatically think, and I say that, and again, my knee-jerk reaction to a lot of this stuff is like, oh my God, I'm going to have to find another way to display my stuff outside of Instagram. And Instagram has a whole bunch of flaws with it, and what's going to drive me nuts, like I've got myself into something where, one, I spend way too much time looking at stuff I don't need to be looking at, and then kicking myself if I don't post on certain specific days because I've gotten in a habit of doing that, and like I'm kidding myself that anybody cares whether I post on a given day or not. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to be disappointing somebody. No one, like anybody that cares even a little bit knows that at some point something else is going to come up, and there's so much other stuff to look at. No one really cares. It's there. So, yeah. So on Instagram has a thing right now where I just recently heard that they're going to either they're currently or they're going to be labeling things that are generated with AI, whether it's fully generated with AI or even has an AI component to it that is that can be read off from whatever the metadata. They're going to be posting a thing saying generated with AI or something like that. So I'm not sure exactly how specific they're going to get. And that could be misleading in a way that you might, let's go to, I don't know, like I said, I don't know how precise it's going to be. Like if you clone out, let's go to, or you retouch a portrait, which if it's a portrait, whatever, say somebody's got a zit, you want that zit out. Like it's a portrait, who cares? You're not sitting there. If you're fully removing them and putting them in a spot where they never existed, then that's more of an issue. But still, like versus something where you just inputted prompts and it's created completely from whole cloth digitally. With that, it's like I would like the kind of like a made with AI versus made by AI. Like just the simple words, like just changing with and by completely changed the meaning of the entire thing. So again, I personally think it's an interesting step that that Instagram is making.
I guess it's encouraging. It's encouraging if they're doing that. That's always been a question I've had is, how do you determine the level of discrimination between, how much editing you're doing, as you say, if you're cloning something out or if you're, getting rid of a spec that comes up on your sensor or whatever versus just synthesizing something that's completely, has had nothing to do with the camera, basically.
No.
So, I mean, I'm hoping they can do that. I mean, I do a lot of landscape photography, and quite frankly, I don't see a place for AI as far as, something where you can pass it off as a photograph. I just don't think that's the arena that, I mean, if you want, if you state it as AI, fine. I mean, people can accept it or reject it, but I guess what I object to is this sort of, not having full disclosure and then having that out there and people say, oh, that's an amazing, amazing image. But realizing that it had nothing to do with the skill of a photographer. It had everything to do with the skill of somebody working with an AI algorithm. So, and I think that's a step in the right direction, I guess is what I'm saying, in terms of, if social media platforms like Instagram and so forth are willing to be transparent and just say, okay, this is an AI generated image, then let people decide whether they want that or whether that's something that they feel that they can be moved by as far as the art or whatever the purpose of the photograph is or image is.
All right. So
reports I've seen so far that Meta has tagged very, very few photos as AI images, as AI. And this is likely to be largely voluntary compliance. So for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, when you post an image now, there's a checkbox. Is this AI generated? But I've never seen anything in my feed that indicates that.
Me either.
Yeah, so somebody's actually a French photographer the other day sent me something, again, knowing that I was going to be doing this. And it was, what's his name? Peter, he's a big YouTube star. Peter, he's Canadian. This was a filmmaker, does photography, videos, and okay, I can't think of his last name right now. Which somebody's going to go look at this and go, okay, the guy's got like 1 million followers. It's like, but anyway, he's entertaining. But his that's where I actually heard about this that Instagram is doing this AI tagging, because he had mentioned that he had put something up and it got tagged as AI, and he said, yeah, well, he did some AI in it. But he didn't like create it out of whole cloth. He just did some whatever. And then he's and seeing other people coming up. Now, I think it would be great, hopefully, and not just from the creative community, just for the community at large. Just again, if you extrapolate this and move it into the news medium and recognize because they just recently, I was reading that there was a fake where it wasn't Anthony Blinken, but it was some U.S. Foreign policy guy, where they were talking about, they had him and they just basically put whole different words in they had him in a news conference, and they faked the questions and then they faked the responses. And so they're like, okay, it was obvious, like the timing of the words and the lips were off, and at one point his tie changed color. But what's called if you don't pay attention to that and think what's called that when you're watching on the interwebs, that what's called that things sometimes just the sync goes off. And now lips are going this way, words are going that way. And if you hear something you want to hear, you stop really paying attention to the close details a lot of times. And that's sad and it's scary. So at the moment, these things are still, again, it's easy enough for the people that like to do this stuff to do it, and getting harder and harder to find the fakes. So it's going to get exponentially harder. Hopefully the technology of will somehow catch up where your whatever computer filters go through, they will be able to catch some kind of tag in there that will give it away. I'm sure there's going to be some ways where every time you find a way to include metadata, somebody finds a way to strip it out. So we'll see where that goes. I mean, voluntary is a good place to start, but it's obviously not anywhere near good enough. So, but I found like it was at a point where I thought I had an uncanny ability to, and I didn't think it was that hard either, to spot what's good these things that were AI. And then recently I've seen some that I was digging into it going, like, I'm looking for it and I cannot find, like this looks like a full-fledged photograph to me. I'm like, I know what I'm looking for. I could not find it. I mean, it was just like a damn good photograph, I thought. So I screwed around with, I didn't use Midjourney, which is supposed to be the best of these things, but I've played around a little bit with some of these things just to see what it's about. And the stuff I'm coming up with is trash. Like it's really awful. Like obviously the ability to do these things well is a skill and an art unto itself. So I don't mind progress. I don't mind new art forms as long as they're labeled what they are. They're not photographs because just by the name photograph, it can't be a photograph because as we all know how the word breaks down. But if they label it computer generated this or AI that, more power to them. Like that's it's a skill, and what's good the ability to go through there. Just like we all get historically, everybody gets scared. Color film was the death to black and white. 35 millimeter was the death to true photography because all photography was a larger format. Digital was going to absolutely kill film and photography in general. So every step of the way, something new comes along, and the old guard gets absolutely like persnickety. I don't use that word often, so I'm just going to throw it in there. But yeah, as long as people grow with it, or don't even grow with it, no one really cares. So no one has to grow. Their art can stay exactly as static as you want it to be. We make our own stuff, but the idea that what's going to, in and of itself, it's going to topple the art world. Yeah, I don't see it. But would anybody have a comment on that?
Well, I think it's going to affect different kinds of photography differently. Like you're a street photographer. I don't think anybody's going to have AI doing street photography. If you were a celebrity photographer or news photographer, yeah, then I think you got a lot to worry about.
Actually, funny you say that because specifically there's another instance I ran across, not even thinking I was going to. I happened to be skimming through some podcasts, and for the life of me, I don't know why I stopped in this one. It was by the Wall Street Journal, which by and large I like the Wall Street Journal, but their guests on this thing were Paris Hilton and her husband. I had no idea she was even married. I haven't heard her name in it seems like decades now. But again, the woman's a savvy business person. So she I remember when she pretty much created this whole celebrity being famous for the sake of being famous thing. And to maintain that this long is no easy feat. So people that think, the influencers, they don't do anything. They do an awful lot in order to maintain their level of influence. It's just a whole thing that I don't necessarily understand, but I can respect because I have zero idea how you do it, and they continue to do it and do it well. So more power to them. But the reason I bring her up is that was because she put up a hypothetical talking about she's shy, and she's probably had like a bazillion photographs taken of her in every way, shape, and form throughout her adult life now. So, and she's got a clothing line and all sorts of stuff. So now imagine, or whatever her other business is, you can imagine at this point, if a publicist says, I'd like a picture of you on a mountainside in a purple parka, riding a snowboard, and she's on a boat in the Mediterranean, and she's like, I'm a bit warm and I really don't feel like doing that. She could easily hire somebody or to AI and skim all those pictures and all that stuff, and bam, there's no photographer sent to the scene. There's no flight crew that's getting paid to take that flight. There's a certain set of infrastructure that will take a hit. It won't be a hit that you can see immediately, but over in time, it could actually work up. So that's the first thing I can see as being what's kind of a direct threat to those kinds of assignments. But the downside to that, and this is again, which I thought of after the fact, I think I really actually thought about it an hour and a half ago, was since the US does not recognize copyright on anything not generated by a human. So again, if it wasn't generated by a human, it can't get copyright. So therefore, if she did that, suddenly that image becomes public domain, and anybody could do any damn thing they want with that picture, and she could say nothing about it because it's public domain. So you have to be careful. Somebody's going to do that because they're not going to think about that, and they're going to create this thing thinking that they're solving a problem. What they're going to do is they're going to open up a whole can of worms and create new problems for themselves. And so I guarantee somewhere along the line, it's going to get ugly that way. Hopefully, it doesn't get too ugly, and people learn quickly. But so with that in mind, I think I just talk myself into a circle, which is how I pretty much learn anything. I usually say one thing and then continue talking. I find myself back where I started again. And so I think that in itself might actually be what would keep her from, in the long run, from continuously doing that. So, and other people. So I just, the flight crews now have get their miles back, and the photographers can work again.
A business that I've thought of is, imagine doing graduation portraits, not by taking somebody out on a nice day into a nice location in nice clothes, but just parents send all the photos they have of their little darling, and they choose the clothes and they choose the location. And you just do it in Midjourney or whatever and send it back.
Yeah. And
Creating virtual memories.
So
exactly.
that's the question then. I mean, and you've already said it, Keith, but I mean, how do you photographers? I mean, I'm a science geek, so I don't do this for a living, but I mean, you guys who do, I mean, how threatened do you feel by it? I mean, I gather Keith not as much, but is that I mean, in your conversations with people in various, forms of photography, is there an expression of concern that this might, minimize or reduce their workload, their careers, because they're not being asked to go out and make photos of things and do assignments and whatnot?
So Roger, are you a full-time photographer?
I'm a obsessed hobby photographer, largely a street photographer.
Okay.
So
okay,
I don't see this really being.
Okay, so then I'm the only, as I can see, I'm the only full-time professional photographer here. So yeah, who's kind of again reducing his workload. But I just imagine, again, I haven't had lots of discussions because I know people in lots of different aspects of photography, and I haven't really had a lot of discussions on AI with anybody. But just by and large, and just reading and human nature and what I see out again in print and on video and stuff like that, it seems like just everybody just at some point or another, it gets weird and people get nervous. So just the idea that there's so many agents, I think I don't know if it's SEPA or just I forget. I know there's a number of agencies, and then of course just the people that use Instagram or any other thing. Again, initially just get worried that what's happening, like a computer is using my stuff without my permission. But again, they're not equating it to the fact, because in the way I mentioned earlier, that everybody else that's going through that feed is either somehow being inspired by, or they're being affected by your work in the exact same way that the computer is. It just has a better memory than most of us do. At least it does in the short term, because it's learning really, really fast. That said, I don't know the future, but again, I'm not necessarily scared by it. Just knowing that there's been all sorts of seismic shifts in the landscape tons of times, and if things just grow. there's always somebody that's going to be affected, and I always feel bad for the unseen, because there's always every single thing, it always affects somebody, and then you can look at it possibly. It's kind of cold, but you can look at it as as an evolution. Again, not everything is meant to last forever, and think the inventor of white patent leather shoes was happy as shit in the 70s, and then suddenly let's go to bam. Like nobody wants to admit that if they weren't for photographs, that guy would probably still be walking around like hiding the fact that he was the guy that created that. But more like, without joking, I'm sure there's somebody that's going to be affected, but by and large, the people that I've known people throughout my life, I've seen that bitch about new trends and things like that, like, oh, and like the old in my day thing. Like, what's kept me afloat professionally all the years is not going, damn, I wish they would only be this, or I wish they hadn't done that, and like, wow, they just don't know what they're doing today. I'm like, whether I believe that or not, no one cares. You have to evolve. Your work has to continue to go forward. You have to make yourself relevant. And if you don't, then whatever it is that you do is going to fall to the side. Like, and it just, for no fault of anybody's, really, just everybody's trying to move forward. So there's only so many pieces of the past you can hold on to. Like, we have museums, we have what's called workshops for collodion photography, which I took years ago. I know how to do this stuff. It's got a really tiny niche out there. I think it's gorgeous and beautiful. It's not going to be taking over. It lasted with any kind of relevance until, oddly enough, the 70s, like in scientific applications. But that's not why people are doing it. They're doing it because it's old, it's dangerous, it doesn't make any sense, but it's beautiful. So a handful of people are still doing it, and other than that, no one's pining away going, damn it, I wish it was still the main way to take a photograph. So it's all these things are just part of the evolution of the whole thing. Now, there's yes, oddly, there are a couple, I'm looking at my notes over there. There are a handful of countries that actually that are allowing copyright for non-human created content. Now, it's different, like, say, the US will allow, if you created something with AI, again, it's with AI versus like just some prompts, they can separate out your component versus the computer's component. You can copyright the human component and say you had a landscape and you generated a better sky because it was like Paris has been for the last couple of weeks, just gray. But you almost got something cool like Ansel Adams had. AI to the rescue, bam, you got the perfect sky. Now you got that. You wanted to copyright it. Well, you can copyright the mountains, the trees, and all this stuff, but literally you cannot copyright the sky. So you can literally only copyright a portion of that thing. If you write a book or something else, the parts that are uniquely you are what's called copyrightable, and the things that aren't are not. And if there's any ambiguity, then everybody's out. There's a couple countries, the UK being the leader of them, but the UK, Hong Kong, India, New Zealand are right now the only countries that are actually allowing copyright by fully generated, artificially generated materials. And so I think it's varying the duration of the copyrights, but I think on some of them it's up to 50 years for certain things. But they're giving the copyright to, right now they're saying the company, but I'm thinking they probably mean the creator. So, and again, to a point, I think the US even should get to that point where once they wrap their heads around this stuff, because again, say, like I mentioned earlier, if you want to get out and you want to come up with some painting, some amazing image, whatever it is, and you're sitting there painstakingly inputting however it is they're doing, because I swear to God, I cannot get anything that, and I try as I've really tried to get this whole photorealistic thing going on in these, I cannot do it for the life of me. It looks absolutely like cartoonish trash. It's funny, but it's nowhere near what I want it to be. And the more I try to prompt it to do it better, it seems to just go farther off topic. And I have no idea. I'm sure there'll be classes for it, and certain people are natural, and we'll get to a point where it will be some accepted work of art. And at that point, why not make it a copyrightable thing? And if somebody has taken the time and they've used a tool in the same way that you use a canvas or you use paints, and the canvas makers and the paint makers are not claiming copyright on the paintings. So camera companies aren't claiming copyright on our images. So if you get to the point where you are, again, not violating somebody else's copyright by saying, okay, I want you to redo Migrant Mother, I'm just going to say it was mine. And that would obviously be bad. But if you can create a style and do all that stuff, then more power to you. Like, why shouldn't that be copyrightable? Because you're just using a tool. What do you think, Tanya? Sorry to put you on the spot.
I don't really have a comment about the copyrightability or something like that. I think that my question has always been more because I'm really new. I've only recently started putting any of my photographs out there publicly, and there's always a question about defining whether something is AI generated or not. And my question is, where do you draw the line? I mean, I take photos with a digital camera, and then I do some post-production work with the normal editing tools that you would do in Lightroom. At what point do you start calling these things AI generated or AI helped, or what point do you start using a label like that, and what's considered, when does it become, my question is, where do you draw the line? I know there are a lot of purists out there who want nothing touched, want it straight out of the camera. And that's beautiful if someone can do that. I don't have a problem with editing in post-production, but I would like to know where the line should be drawn.
Well, specifically on that, because that's a whole topic unto itself. I think I've addressed it a bunch of times. This idea that was straight out of camera is fine. Like, if you wanted to do straight out of camera and beat your chest saying, "Hey, my images are straight out of camera," fine. That does one of two things. There's a few things I can think of. One of which is you're just lazy. You just don't want to make it better. And so, like, okay, the thing might be a great shot, but as I learned years ago, and Bob, I know you probably heard this, that a workshop I had attended, it was like a recurring thing that we would go to monthly years ago back in the Bronx by this fine art printer and photographer. And he would say, it's like, there's never been a photo, I 100%, never been a photograph created in camera that couldn't be enhanced to be better in some way, shape, or form with a little bit of dodging and burning. Yeah, just not talking about going full tilt and changing the entire look of the thing, but some way, somehow, there's something that you can do that can make that shot better. In order to, and by better, who knows what that means? That just will get the goal across, get it across the goal line. Say, whatever it is you're trying to focus on, you can do things subtly that will increase the person's perception of that mountain or the person or this or that. We're not even talking about retouching like pimples off or removing a Coke bottle from the street or something like that. Literally just some dodging and burning. And that can be done in the darkroom. Just like, again, pimples and braces and all that stuff were done with paintbrushes and pencils and stuff like that before the days of computers. So these are all things that have been done forever. And again, that when the straight out of camera thing, like, okay, so that in essence, what that person is saying is that I'm better. They're like, screw Cartier-Bresson. He's a hack. He had to have what's called his images were, again, dodged and burned Kudelka. Like his exposures as those of us that met in the class, we got to see Kudelka's images, and those things, apparently some of his negatives were bulletproof. Like it required an expert printer just to get some kind of detail out of the things, and yet the detail was there, and the images were poignant and beautiful. If you were just okay, develop that, contact print it, and call it a day, you would have never seen some of the most beautiful works of photography ever. Or you might have seen them, but they'd have looked like crap. But the image is there. Again, it just capturing the image is just one step in a process to get to the final. And so you have nowadays you've got AI assisting with things that we have done forever. Like, again, you just want to spot something, you want to clone something out, or you want to retouch something out, you want to do whatever. Now AI is making that easier. It's this generative fill thing that starts to get a little freaky, and where you can say, okay, I'm going to take this bench out and I want to replace by a pit of vipers. Like, ooh, it can do that. Why? I don't know. But again, I just did something stupid like that the other day just to see, because they got the new trial version of Photoshop that has some kind of crazy generative fill. So I'm like, let's see what that's about, because I enjoy pushing buttons. And again, when it was just doing something like legit, shocking, like it just literally, you can't even tell where the thing was going to remove something and just added something that didn't even exist, but it just looks around, figures what could be there, and suddenly you've got plants or grass or concrete or whatever in places where you obviously it's making this stuff up, but that starts to get gray. If obviously you add something, you have it add something completely in, like, okay, I want this guy, like, make this person a twin, then I think you're now that's no longer gray. Now you've completely just screwed with photographic nature. But yeah, it's getting the purist thing. Again, more power to them. Like there's some great stuff out there by people that are still shooting large format, going into the darkroom, bleaching things and using chemical processes to enhance, and like, wow, I'm in love with that stuff. Like, more power, please. I hope they stick around and do that for at least for the rest of my lifetime, because after that, I don't have anything to say about it. But I love to look at it. But to say that that's the only way to do it is wrong, I think. So, yeah, Tanya, don't worry about what's good. Anybody ever tells you your stuff needs to come right out of the camera, just at that point, just recognize they're just messing with you, or they think way too much of themselves. Yeah, either way, what's you stumbled across the wrong person to have an argument with, and it's time to walk away at that point. So, right. Let's see what else I have on my. Oh yeah, actually. Okay, so I was interviewing a photographer, a Danish. No, I take that back. And when if he watches this, I apologize for calling you Danish. He is Dutch, and so he mentioned something to me which I hadn't even thought of, and I thought it was brilliant. So the idea of the prompting AI to create something that wasn't there. So is it the AI making it, or is it the prompter? And I think about this is a professional photography thing, but art directors and photographers. The art director, in essence, was the person prompting. The art director comes up with an idea, gathers from their lifetime of stuff and other visual clues, maybe makes up a storyboard, gives it to the photographer. The photographer then looks at it and, with their own skills and their own history, creates the art director didn't create it. The art director entered the prompts to the photographer, who then created an idea that wasn't their own. And then, but the photographer's getting copyright. And typically what's good nowadays, of course, somebody else wants the corporation they're probably creating this stuff for wants the copyright on the whole thing. So basically, we're looking at just a really slow AI process, whereas the photographer in this case is the AI. So again, there's not a world of difference between that little workflow than there is with sitting at your computer, except that sitting at your computer is much faster. And again, it doesn't cost. A buddy of mine literally was contracted to fly to a glacier and was going to spend a week doing a fashion spread where they had to helicopter everything in. Needless to say, the budget on that's going to be far greater than sitting in your pajamas with a cocktail and inputting a few prompts. So.
I think there's a middle ground that somebody mentioned to me that sounded interesting, which is using AI to kind of storyboard or do mock-ups for a shoot that you want to do as a way to sort of say, is this idea going to even work?
So I think that sounds great. Why
versus
not?
A finished product. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, and the only reason, you can probably make it look like, if you can't now, you will be in the future, make it look like a finished product. Again, the only problem with that is the not copyrightable thing, and suddenly everything's going to hell. But
right.
I think it's a great idea to Polaroids. Again, now we've got digital. I remember Polaroids being the digital of the day. So we all remember the ones we had at the house, and the family member pops it out, and it's the greatest thing in the world. As a professional, they used to put these things, they had backs that you would put on your various professional camera, but from 35 millimeter all the way up to an 8x10. And the only reason you're taking the Polaroid is not because it's art in and of itself. You were taking it just to make sure your lights were firing and everything that needed to work in the split second there actually worked. And so that was the only reason for Polaroid in the professional sense was what we have is digital now. And then I used to joke that your best shot of the day might be that damn Polaroid. And then after that, everything else starts to move and just go wrong. You're like, God. So the rest of the day is spent chasing that Polaroid. Now with digital, of course, once you got it, you got it. Now it's just, okay, now let's play and shoot some more. But the idea of using AI to storyboard, I think, is an outstanding idea. Like, why not? But then you're going to have somebody else who's going to be the guy who's the artist who drew up these storyboards is going to be pissed off that now just any schmuck who can type is going to be able to do it. And that guy is going to be out there having his own Zoom meeting talking about how his career just changed. So again, so he's going to have to learn, unfortunately, to expand his skill set. And this is all hypothetical, but I can totally see, Michael, that one coming about. So yeah,
can I just taking a step back of thinking about all the stuff we've been talking about. So I kind of see this sort of as a two-part story. One is the application, right?
Mm-hmm.
How you use AI, and I'm less concerned about that because I do see the utility of it. I do see the potential for using it in ways that are beneficial to the practitioner. That are beneficial in terms of what you're trying to do in a project and so forth. And I like the Polaroid analogy there. The more what I see as a potentially nefarious side is when someone takes somebody's copyrighted images, and then applies that to AI-based technology and doesn't give proper attribution or ascribe proper provenance for that work. And that's the part, I guess, that I struggle with, because I think it's wrong. I don't think it's right to take someone else's work and by either purposeful misleading people, or just by not saying it, and then other people just making the assumption that that's your work when it's really not your work. That's the part that I guess I have trouble with.
Well, let me just see if I'm following. So if the person again generates this an image, and it looks like another image, or are we saying that we're just
I'm just saying, like, if you have
passing off
Instagram
as a
and
photograph?
they're, gleaning from the vast repertoire of images that, people have posted on there. I'm not saying Instagram themselves would do it necessarily, but I mean, you have a repository of work there that someone can take and use that for other reasons. You manipulate it maybe in certain ways without the original creator's permission or signing off on it. So I mean, I guess what I'm saying is that's the part for me. It's not the application so much. I think I can appreciate the applications for things. I don't necessarily agree with it. I see it in education as well. I mean, students who are generating AI essays and AI generated essays and so forth. I mean, I have a problem with that.
Yeah,
but
totally.
But I understand that there's potential for appropriately using that technology. But the other side of it to me is the rights of the creator, rights of of the work that's being done, and recognizing that. And unfortunately, I think a lot of that boils down to something that I think Roger said earlier about the different social media platforms. I don't trust them to that they're going to be fully transparent and say, yeah, this is AI generated, or this is from 35 millimeter Ilford 400 film, whatever. I just don't trust them. Whether that's true or whether the technological capabilities are, because you got to screen a vast number of images to make that determination of whether it's AI generated or something else. I realize computers are strong, powerful. They can go through lots of data very quickly, but I'm not entirely certain that that's something that the companies, what's their motivation? And I mean, what's holding them accountable in that respect?
Well, I wouldn't even imagine they currently have the motivation, other than there's a bunch of pissed off people. Do you have? I don't think they have the technology necessary to fully. Roger was saying to fully screen. So you're right at the moment. We're in the beginning of this Wild West show, and they're just kind of like asking people to drop their money in the basket and just take what you paid for.
I think that's a good.
I want to go back to something that Bob said.
Yep, sorry.
I want to go back to something that you said. I'm talking about attribution. Attribution is critical. If you're going to take my work and do something with it, you have to attribute it to me. But at least in the US, if someone takes copyrighted work and sufficiently transforms it, that can be fair use. So that if you sufficiently transform my work, whatever that means, with AI, is that fair use? I don't know.
Yeah, but that's exactly where the Lynn Goldsmith thing came in. So they tried to do the fair use thing, and also that they transformed it enough, and they didn't. It's good. Again, it was the exact same picture, just it was orange versus purple. Like it's amazing to me that they thought that was going to fly. That said, what's going on? What made me, because I was following the case when it was actually going to the courts, because I was like, this is a landmark case. And then I remember years before that, which gave me reason to doubt that Lynn Goldsmith is going to win this thing, even though it seemed like it should be a slam dunk, is that, again, involving Instagram as the middleman. It wasn't this had nothing to do specifically with Instagram, but there was some guy calling himself an artist who was selling his art was he would take Instagram posts, like literally just take the whole post. He was like, bam, copy it, not change a damn thing. Like the word, the comments, picture, remove, like screen capture it, add some text to it somewhere, and then sell this as art. And this guy was making money hand over fist. This guy was a legitimately successful business person. I can't call him an artist. Because I don't think what he did was art. Literally, all you did was steal, literally even the comments, and then just add like an extra comment or some text somewhere. And they said, well, that was fair use, and they sufficiently they altered it. I'm like, in no way, shape, or form can you rationally say that was altered enough in order to change the whole meaning of the thing. No, it was the laziest scam I've ever seen. And let's go, yeah, this guy got away with it. And again, he got sued. He won. And so not only did he was going to, again, luckily I don't remember, I wish I remembered his name just so that I could say it. But on the other side, I'm glad he's not famous enough that we should all know who he is. But like, so you just don't know who you're going to get, again, judging your case. And this is where the appeals come. Like, that one obviously didn't go up to the Supreme Court because I don't even think, whereas I have my doubts on the Supreme Court and certain things, like, I think that one was like literally, if they were able to get the Lynn Goldsmith one, changing the color of the whole canvas is way more than this guy did. And they was good sided with Lynn. So that said, I'm thinking that was good. If the laws are in place that if they were to take your stuff, like it comes down to how much you're taking. Again, like inspiration is inspiration. Like if you're inspiring, say, I want to create a picture of a duck riding what's called another duck, but in the style of an old Western novel painting theme. Well, whoever it was that whoever painted those pictures in a novel had that style, and now this picture comes across, and okay, well, it was inspired by that, but in no way, shape, or form will somebody say that it was, because there's plenty of painters that were inspired by other painters, and they're you can see the similarity in their style. Again, historically, it was going to use whole movements, and that's how these movements are created. Was because somebody starts it, and then a bunch of people go, "Wow, that's awesome," and then they want to do it, and then you can see the inspiration. Now, that's not plagiarizing. That's not what's good stealing. That's not. It depends on who you ask. Somebody will think that, oh, like leave my stuff alone. Like get your own style. But like Picasso started an entire whole new genre. Like there you go. He started an entirely different way. And then of course, every bunch of people just jumped on the bandwagon and they started. And now like, oh, if you know Picasso well enough, you can save it. There's some stuff out there. You might go, oh, is that Picasso? Oh no, it's not. It's so at what point is that different? So it's the difference with using what's called like if somebody's trying to write a novel, and let's forget the novel out of it because that's art. Somebody's writing a term paper, and AI generates their term paper for them. Well, they should get freaking failed. that again, there's a client of mine, more my client's husband, had come up with software years ago, and it was software that was used to determine plagiarism in academic papers. And so he made an awful lot of money off that. And it's serious. It's sick how good these things are at finding out what's good. I keep wondering what's good just by, if you read a bunch and you just remember and you start writing, well, you're not going to get plagiarized, like sued for plagiarism if you read a lot and then incorporate all the stuff, even if you don't attribute, as long as you're not like sitting with your, like a paper here, a paper there, a paper there, and literally copying stuff out. If you're just digesting all this stuff, and then you basically almost forget where you've heard it, and you write it out, you're not plagiarizing. And you don't, at that point, you don't really technically, we need attribution, because at that point, you're not even sure where you got it. You just read so much that you're just spitting it back out in a new soup. Of course, at that point, you're not going to be taken seriously if you don't attribute. So that wouldn't be considered a true scientific paper or anything like that. So the protections are in place for a lot of the stuff, I think. Yeah, it doesn't mean, just because I think it doesn't mean I'm right, but I'm thinking it's because of how we all go about our daily lives of creating anything. It's like it was mentioned earlier. In my view, we're all just creating a stew of all the things, all the experiences, all the things we've seen, we've done, we've tasted, heard. Like there's no musician that's making a song that didn't have some inspiration by something else. No photographer that didn't look at another photograph and go, oh, even if you specifically are trying to what's called not copy, you're still inspired. So the yeah, I don't see that as a major problem. Say again in Instagram, somebody wants to lie to you and say, okay, well, this is a photograph, and Instagram doesn't catch it. Then he's just lied to us and lied to himself. Like, now we're not gonna, chances are we might go, that's great. And then you're not gonna go hire him. Like say you're skimming through Instagram and you're in search of a photographer who does a certain thing, and this guy comes up with his AI generated content, and you're like, oh, that's exactly what I want. I'm going to hire you. But you're thinking this person's thinking this guy's a photograph. And now this guy is going to get caught in a scam immediately because he can't generate that in real life, because they're going to want to see that. They don't like this stuff being remote. Somebody's going to be there to watch the finger go like that. And so this guy is not going to be able to pull it off. So somebody's going to get fooled. Somebody's going to lie. And it's going to make somebody feel bad about themselves. Somebody's like, "Oh, I suck. I'm a horrible photographer because look at that guy's work, and why can't I do something like that?" And it's not actual work. Well, this is where it's just the idea of you just have to have confidence in yourself and what you do, and recognize that. Actually, a similar thing. They don't do it in the U.S., but they do it here in France. If you have like an ad, like a bill. Like I was walking by a billboard of Lenny Kravitz the other day, and in the lower right-hand corner, in French, it said basically that this is a retouched photograph. And then I had remembered that actually that's a thing. So not just for Lenny Kravitz, but across the board, and it's put in place for the most part because how many people have again, just thinking of kids in particular who grow into adults, who look at, say, fashion models or whoever, and they think, oh, I want to be like that. And why can't I be like that? Well, they're not even like that. And for a long time, it's hurt people and people that are that don't have a lot of self-esteem go, oh, I can't be like that. That person's perfect. I wish I could be like that, but I can't. I suck. There should be a thing mentioning that that's not actually even that person. Like that's inspired by that person. But again, with all the work done on site, even with the makeup beyond that, they then must have come in, and long before it's called AI, they're sitting there nudging in with some Photoshop, or even before Photoshop, they would sit there and come in on the waist, and so they could do literally. It's amazing what you could do even before computers, and make people look unrecognizable if you ever saw them in person. So it's fine, do it if you want, but it should, I think, advertising even should be, and this is where I think advertising is kind of, well, advertising would do nothing if it wasn't forced to do it. So advertising is being forced to disclose certain things. People that use AI should be forced to disclose certain things. And for no other reason than it's the truth. And again, the truth shall set you free, so they say. So so the ones that are going to lie to us, the only one they're getting over on for the most part is themselves. As I see it at this point in time, doesn't mean it's not going to cause all sorts of chaos. And again, I'm most actually legitimately concerned with the political world of what AI generated sound and images can do, like, because
entire
they're not
videos, even.
Yeah, it's insane. So, but I don't even want to delve into that because that will make my hair go white right now, and so it's a whole nother topic, but and far more serious than creators' rights. But again, but we're here talking about this. So yeah. Anyway, I think for the most part that's my 2 cents, which is off was more like a $1.80. But any more topics do you guys want to bring up? Like related to?
I'm going to have to leave, but you've given us some food for thought, Keith. I appreciate that. Yeah, I still wrestle with the provenance thing, but I understand your point, and that's going to be something that I just have to work out for myself. I mean, it sounds awfully arrogant of me to think that maybe people want to steal my work. I'm not going to be like, on that level to have people worry, to be worried that people are gonna, like, a lot of people are gonna want to steal my work. So,
Well, your work is beautiful, and what's
well, I
going to
appreciate.
they'd be
Thank
better off
you.
stealing your work because it's not as well known. They could more easily steal your work and then tweak it and present it as
Oh,
something.
thanks. Yeah, I was just thinking about going back on the Instagram. Yeah, thanks for saying that. There goes. You just burst my bubble.
No, but again, they'll get busted. So don't you worry. Again,
Okay.
anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing you again.
Yeah, anybody who's in Paris, 24th through the 27th or whatever, yeah, love to get together. I'll reach out again. I we've got a WhatsApp thread and stuff like that. So anybody, Tanya and Anja, I know is not with us, but yeah, I'll just let you guys know what's happening once we get closer to the time. But you guys take care. All right, it was good to see you. And Roger, it's nice meeting you. And
Nice meeting you too.
I'm gonna sign off then. Take care, guys.
All right. See you soon.
Bye.
And I think what's gonna, unless you guys have something, I think this is a good time to wrap it.
Sounds
Thanks
good.
very much,
I'm
Keith.
just, thanks very much.